Hi, everyone. Welcome to the YAM Podcast. My name is Nal Hafin, and today we have a very special guest, Raz Grammer. We literally just pulled this off in 5 or 10 minutes. Like, we were having a conversation just between the two of us preparing for the Yoga Avec conference and the Yoga Avec membership portal. And then she started telling me her story. And then I was like, we need to record this right now for the YAM Podcast. Literally, I am here for those who get to see the video clip. I'm in my pajamas. And Raz literally just spent 5 minutes getting ready and putting on some beautiful earrings and lipstick. Okay, so we are here. I did not get the time to do that. Okay. But hey, we are here and we're super excited to share with you this very episode because Raz has a lot of amazing things to share about nutrition and diet. We're just going to go right into it where we just like basically the inspiration of doing the podcast came from, which is telling us your story. So please tell us from the beginning. What is your story? How did you get into nutrition? Where did all this come from? Yeah. And how did it develop to where you are like today?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for this super impromptu, we're throwing it together podcast. I'm so excited for you and I'm so excited to be here as well with you today. How did I get into nutrition? To take it back to where we were talking about, going back to the beginning, my undergrad is actually not nutrition based at all. So I did my undergrad in psychology and communications at University of Oklahoma. And interest areas that I had back then were in the area of like leadership development, skill acquisition, problem solving, higher intelligence, this idea of like, how do we function and lead as we do in the world? That progressed to a psych degree, a bachelor's in psychology that at least here in the States, you can't really do much with, right? It's limited where I can go and what to do. I was working in retail all throughout my undergrad to pay for school, basically. I got a really great opportunity to go into management with them. Being freshly graduated, I took that route. And that route took me to a store that I managed where I had an assistant who she was just sick for actually months. For months on end, she was just sick. And what did that look like and translate in our world is that she was losing weight left and right. Now, in fashion, when you're losing weight, that's a great thing. We want that. So no one's questioning how is she getting into these super teeny tiny jeans that she's like modeling for us. Just wait.
Was this all in Oklahoma?
Yes.
Okay.
This was all in Oklahoma, what feels like now a million years ago, but it was more like maybe 15, 17 years ago, something like that. She's losing all this weight. And then we had a day where I had to send her to the hospital because I was like, you're not okay. Something's not right and you're not okay. She basically says the hospital won't help her, which was odd to us. But later we kind of pieced things together that the way that she was acting wasn't okay, but we didn't know why. Then we come to find out she's been living off of kiwis and strawberries because everything else she ate, she literally would say it would just run right through her. Like nothing was working for her body. Here is a young woman. She was maybe in her mid-30s, early to mid-30s, experiencing all this physical stuff and feeling really helpless. Me and the other assistant, we just start talking, we start researching, we start looking into stuff. We gave her like a list of questions and tests to go ask her doctor about. She goes back to do that. And then she finds out she has Crohn's disease, which it is an autoimmune disorder. It is something that makes it very hard when you're inflamed to be eating anything. And literally everything just runs right through you. She's been living with this for months and months, not having any clear understanding what's going on. And that was the beginning spark that led me into looking more nutrition in regards to healing and health and where all you could go with it. I also think with a lot of my upbringing up until that point, I thought of things being very this is how we do things, and not necessarily looking at alternative methods of how food can be looked at as medicine. This was the first introduction to that. Then I applied, by the grace of God, I feel like I got into Florida State. And I only say that because when your background isn't science and you're trying to get into a science field, it's hard. And you have to like really prove that you deserve to be there. Someone took some bounty upon me and decided I needed to be there, which started an amazing adventure for me of just learning so much about food and nutrition from angles and areas that I didn't even think were possible, to be honest with you. I was heavily research-based. My advisor and very dear friend, Dr. Bahram Arjmandi, he was incredible. He was tough. He was hard. Don't get me wrong. My time there was hard. My master's was really hard. But the amount of knowledge and the tools that I gained and how to use them, I feel like I've not even learned from any place that I've worked at the last 12 to 13 years. It was incredible. So grad school was the hardest thing I've ever done and so incredible all at the same time. But working with him, we worked in the area of, actually it was osteoporosis. So the area of work that I did was like osteoporosis and osteoporosis prevention, looking just at inflammatory markers, foods, specifically the effects of dried plum on bone health. So that was part of what I did for my master's thesis with him.
If you think about dried plum in our cultural heritage, like being Persian, like we eat dried plums in so many of our foods. Was all that like an inspiration of it? Was that like related to?
It was actually a project that he had going. It was an NIH grant and funding that he had specifically to look at this. And he'd done smaller clinical trials, but this was like a much larger study that we did of like about, I want to say, I think it was 236 postmenopausal women that did a 1-year trial of consuming dried plums. And then we looked at the effects on their bones through DEXA scans and biomarkers of bone formation and resorption. It was a very large study.
So what did you find? What was the conclusion of the study?
Yeah,
is it good? Should we have it? Should we not have it?
Fantastic. What we found is that within 3 months of consuming dried plums every day as part of your diet, you start to see markers of bone formation increase as markers of bone resorption stay where they're at, right? Because bone, which, God, I feel like we could talk about bone. I'm like, I'm a bonehead and we could talk about bone forever. Bone is a very metabolic structure within the body. We don't think of it that way because we just think of this as the hard substance that we have. But there's so much that happens metabolism wise within bone. And all the time your bone is building and then breaking down and building and breaking down. And if you think about it, it's like a piggy bank, right? That in your younger years, as you build more into your bone and the stronger and more dense you make it, the more you have long-term to use from it, right? Because of course, as we age and our hormonal changes and shifts that we go through, that's when like our risk for osteoporosis as women increases.
Wow.
Right? Yeah.
So should I just be like eating so many plums right now? Like, is that what your advice is?
Part of a healthy diet. So included with everything. Yeah. But no, it's fantastic. It's not the only food, because even in a lot of our lit reviews, what we found was that just people in general that consumed higher amounts of fruits and vegetables in general had higher bone densities. Now, some of this could also be where people live, the types of work they do, because even like resistance training is incredible for your bone health. Yeah.
Do that. I just did that today, this morning.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah. What is in plums that make it so good for bones?
Yeah. The polyphenolic compounds that are in it. It's literally the chemical structure of the plums itself that affects it.
Does it have anything to do with the taste of it because it's sour? Anything? No,
not necessarily. Now, I was also going to say, Bone is also really high in things like magnesium and potassium, right? Especially in its dried form. It's really high in these minerals. And these are all minerals that are part of our bone structure. So those could also have factors that affect it. Yeah. But based on our study, what we found more was that consuming that, and our control group was actually dried apples. Both groups had something to consume. We saw the difference. Like I said, within 3 months, you could see it in blood markers. Within 6 months, we saw it on DEXA scans. So
what's a DEXA scan?
So DEXA scan stands for dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. And that's basically a way of deciphering hard tissue versus soft tissue throughout the body. So think of it like an X-ray, but a little different, right? Because an X-ray, we're looking at just like your bones. This can also tell us like your fat tissue, your muscle tissue. We look at it a little bit different as far as that goes.
It's more like comprehensive. It's like all of the tissues are
more comprehensive. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And DEXA is one way that you could tell. There are other methods, but DEXA is the more streamlined, mainstream way.
And it's called what? It's called DEXA?
DEXA, DEXA.
Oh, DEXA. Okay.
DEXA. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I wonder if it's different out there for you guys.
Who knows? It'll probably use like the same acronym for it or something like that. But I'm curious to know, when you did the study for apples and plums, maybe for bone health, apples worked, but what about for sugar? Because like apples have higher in sugar. So how did that fare with something like plums that were sour?
Fascinating. Yes. So part of what we wanted to do was, more than anything, we wanted to make sure that the caloric intake of both groups was the same, right? Because calories and weight, actually, there's a lot of research that looks at like girls in their adolescence who are a little on the heavier side versus leaner girls, and that their bone density is a lot stronger long-term. And so
for the heavier girls, or for the bone density?
Because literally when you have weight on your bones,
like, that resistance that you were talking about,
resistance affects it, and therefore increases levels of density. Yes. Yeah. And we've seen that across the board in all cultures, actually, because some cultures are more prone to things like osteoporosis. Some of that may have to do with like just their frailness. Some of it just has to do with genetics, right? If your grandmother had osteoporosis and you have similar body types, you could also fall at higure risk of osteoporosis.
And just actually share with everyone, what is osteoporosis for those who don't know what it is?
Sure. Osteoporosis is bone loss that women and men can suffer. This density that decreases because of this bone loss long-term puts you at higher risk of fractures. Now, why is that a big deal? Because we think to ourselves, I broke my arm when I was a kid. It's not that serious, right? It may not be serious as a kid to break your arm, but when you're older, when you're more frail, breaking something like a hip can literally put you in a hospital style bed for 6 months to recover. And within that time, there's a whole host of other illnesses and ailments that can come up that can then increase mortality rate. So even though we don't think of osteoporosis as something serious when we're younger, older, it can cause a lot of complications for individuals. Yeah. So it is pretty serious. Also, breaking bones is not something we want to be doing. There's a lot of things we don't want to be doing. Yeah. Especially as we're getting older. Like breaking bones on top of a lot of other health issues, it's just a lot.
It's like the last thing that we want. I heard actually a lot of times, like when older, frailer people, they fall, it's actually because they first broke a bone and that's why they fell, rather than it's actually that they tripped on something and then they hit something hard and then they fractured their bone. It's actually first thrown fracture happened and then they fell. And this is like that aspect of, if your bones are not strong, like you can't even keep the structure of your body upright. So what you were saying, resistance training. All right. Noted. I'll be thinking about my bone health. Actually, having said that, my family's line of bone health is so bad.
Really?
On both sides.
Interesting.
And I've recently starting to do a lot of like more weight training and physical, like push-ups and things like that, because I'm a yogi. What we do is stretch. We stretch for days.
Right.
We don't do a lot of strength, like resistance training. So I can be extremely flexible, but I'm not very strong. And it's usually like in yoga, it's like a dance between you either are strong or you're flexible. You never get to have like strong but flexible muscles
together.
Exactly. That's like really, in terms of like gymnastics, you have to have both.
Yeah.
But usually for yogis in general, they just focus on their stretching and they get like hyperflexive for like their muscles, and sometimes like their joints, they don't have enough muscle strength to actually hold them into place, because everything is like liquid and just like moving.
I do feel like, to some extent though, doing yoga and those stretchings, because when you're stretching, it's not just the muscles, you're also helping stretch out the tendons and ligaments, and those tend to pull on the bone. So it does give you some, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like you need to say that again like 10 times. Like, you need to repeat that. Just say that one more time. Okay. When you're stretching.
When you're stretching.
All the yogis are going to be like, what? What did you say?
Now, you may have to add in some resistance bands as well to help a little bit more, but stretching in general, like, it opens up the muscles, right? But it also stretches out tendons and ligaments just ever so slightly. It's not a lot, but as those interact with the muscle and on the bone, because that's what attaches our muscles to our bone, it pulls on the bones. And that is what also helps
bone
to
health,
build the resistance, and helps to build the bone health as well. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I feel like all the yogis are going to be like, hallelujah.
But again, you may still have to go a step deeper, especially if osteoporosis is like in your genetic line. And it's interesting that you brought up that on both sides, there's bone density issues in your family. It's because crazy. I actually have it on my dad's side.
Wow.
My dad's bone density is a little bit lower, and he's improved it quite a bit over the years. Like, my dad, oh my God, how old's my dad? He's turning 73 this year.
Wow.
You wouldn't think it. He acts like he's like probably in his 30s and 40s. Actually, he acts more like he's like in his teens. His energy level and his strength is really high, but he also does. He lifts light weights. My dad's a really small guy. And when I say small, he's probably 135 to 140 pounds. I think he's like maybe 5'5", 5'6". He's not very tall, like really lean, small guy. But he's incredibly strong. And he does like light weights. He actually has done some yoga as well, and he loves it.
I'm impressed. Yeah. Go Papa Raz.
Persian daddy doing yoga at the gym.
That's real. That's real talk right there.
Mind blowing.
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel like all the ancestors are like, Yamaha.
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So all that led me to studying nutrition. And during my program, like, my 2-year master's took me 4 years, because I decided to become a dietitian along the way as well. Wow. Because again, a master's in nutrition just sets you up to do a PhD. I wasn't ready for that at that time. So I became a dietitian, and then.
So were they two separate degrees? Like 2 years master's and 2 years of dietitian? Wow. So a dietitian is like another master's. So it's like basically two masters.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. In a way to look at it, yes. The reason for it is because there's a lot of coursework that's needed in order to be able to apply to and do the internship. And you can't do the internship. One, you have to get into the program, but then in order to become a dietitian, you have to do this dietetic internship, which is, I think it's 1,200 hours now. So it's intense. It's like a year's worth of doing clinicals and working in food service, working in community nutrition, in order to be able to just sit for your exam. So it's funny, because I think that one also always comes up for me too, when people are like, oh, so you're not a nutritionist. I'm like, technically I am. Technically I'm a registered dietitian and nutritionist because I've definitely done the work to be a nutritionist, but also I have a license. So dietitians have license. Nutritionists don't necessarily. Yeah.
So you can work in like hospitals and stuff and consult with like people who have cancer and they need to change their diets and stuff like that, or like how they need to eat.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my past, I've done that. I've done hospitals. I've done outpatient. I've done like smaller clinics. I'm doing private practice right now. I've even consulted for schools in order to get funding from states for their food programs, like within like their lunch program, right?
I was just going to
That's
say
something, that's like community nutrition work. And if
because I was going to ask, like, why do all the hospitals have such shitty food? Basically, I was going to be like, tell us, Raz, tell us why the hospitals have such garbage foods. If you're working in the hospital, wouldn't you be one of them who eats the food? Wouldn't you know?
Absolutely. Do you know that's actually, as dietitians, and this falls a little bit more under like their supervisors and managers, but I remember during my internship, that was one of the things we had to do every month. You got a tray and you had to eat, or try the food, and then you rated it. And then you gave that back to the kitchen staff or to like the food service manager, right? So you give your review back to the food service manager, and then they evaluate. They take that information and further evaluate it. And oh my God.
When you're rating it, or you're not rating it as like a gourmet chef, like whether or not it tastes good, you're rating it in terms of nutritional content, right?
Yeah, this is no Top Chef. This is not anything like that. But no, you're rating it. So for example,
for taste,
for content, for example, like you wouldn't just get a regular, let's say if the meal of the day, for example, was a piece of lemon chicken with mashed potatoes and green beans and peaches, for example, okay? You wouldn't just get that regular tray with that regular texture consistency. You would probably get like a pureed version of it. And then you would taste each one of them to be like, how is it? How shitty, for lack of a better way of saying it, or 5-star rating would you give it? But I also think the thing with hospitals is that, at least in the hospital setting, is that they are such large entities. And in the end, they are a financial institution that wants to make money. Yes, they are a business. They really have to look at bottom lines and things like that, which is unfortunate because I think sometimes with small little changes, they can really provide incredible high quality foods. But does the cost outweigh the time? Is the cost, the time, the effort that you put into it worth the taste? Yeah. And it's unfortunate because I wish that dietitians could be much more involved. And it's weird because when you look at it, it appears they are. Like your food service manager most often is a dietitian, right? But it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be making these amazing gourmet meals. They still have a budget to do. Actually, I remember forever ago, I was gonna say, this is sad. I can't think of what state it was, but a friend that was like working for the county, right? She was saying the meal that they're charging like $1.50 for, her max budget was something like 87 cents, like for lunch, for a school lunch. When you think about everything that goes in and you want this cost to finish at 87 cents, what are you going to feed? Like, this is why there's such crappy foods in a lot of these institutions, because we're not necessarily looking at having highest quality. We're looking at how am I going to make the most money off this? Yeah. Our conversation went a very different route.
It really did. It really did. I didn't expect it to go this route, but I'm just like thinking because so when my brother He had cancer. This is actually why it's related to osteoporosis. I'll bring it all back, actually.
Okay.
When he was in the hospital and the types of food that he was eating, like one was just, none of it was actually good for his health. And I was like thinking, if you're a hospital, shouldn't everything that you do be coherent with the health of the patient? It's not thinking about that institution, because at least in Canada, it's free. It's not the same in the US for you, but in Canada, it's free. So we don't have that like issue of like really a hospital being like a place to earn money, but like the food was still not great. And I'm just thinking of what you were saying about being like ultimately like a financial institution and needing to please people. In this circumstance where it's not, I wouldn't say it made me, maybe I don't even know how it works in Canada, like the healthcare system, or like how exactly money gets allocated for what, but it didn't seem to have that sort of barrier. But still, they didn't prioritize like food and nutrition in the thing. Not that my brother would have eaten the healthy meal. He ended up just eating all the foods that my mom made. Like that's what he craved, was like home cooked foods in the hospital. But bringing that back to my brother and like our genetic family being like bad at just having bad bones. My brother, because of chemo, it fried his shoulder blades and his knees, like his bone sockets were completely, he's like a titanium man. He has like titanium in his arms and titanium in his knees. Yeah, both his knees. And so it's just, and so with someone with those kind of things, like what would you recommend? Still like strength training still?
I think it's still, I think there's more to it than just that. Like, I think there's a lot of other factors we'd have to look at, because I think it depends. Like, as far as those parts of the body goes, those may be set in their ways, but that doesn't mean he can't still affect the rest of his body, like his hips, his lower back. Those are like definitely hips for sure, because that's a tough fracture to have to deal with. So again, even walking, literally walking. Or
he used to walk with a cane, and he's like pretty young. He's like a young dude walking around with a cane.
Or even swimming, like the resistance that you get from being in the water and just kicking.
I do that.
Incredible on the body.
Love it. Yeah.
It's so great. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be something that is so strenuous, but it does have to be something that's consistent.
To involve the tug and pull and the motion and just like ligaments, bones, muscles, everything just like pressing on top of each other, and just the blood flow and all these things, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Because then you support it with food and nutrition, and it helps you in the long term. Or even if you're like in your brother's case, I don't know what his diet is. We won't analyze it here, because poor guy, he can't even defend himself, right? If we were to jump in. But again, in his case, or a lot of other people's cases that are younger that fall at higher risk of this, which I will tell you is another thing I'm seeing a lot, especially in women, because just more and more women are going into kind of like earlier menopause, or just there's a lot of hormonal imbalances that they go through. It shifts all of these aspects of the body, and how estrogen actually protects our bones and helps them stay as strong as they are. We start to lose this when we start to go into this early state of menopause. So that's where, like, when you're eating the right foods, or just getting the nutritional support that your body needs, you are able to pull through in the long run a lot better than someone who just flat out doesn't do.
So tell us a little bit about how estrogen like protects like the bones. Tell us how like the whole female bone situation, because like I've heard things where after 30 women just don't absorb calcium that much, and it's basically you're screwed after that. If you didn't get calcium before you were 30, you don't have it anymore, and after 30 you just basically lose it over time. Is that true?
No, not directly. I mean, part of it is, but not directly. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. Maybe I did. About, think of your bones like a piggy bank. Okay. So all the investment that you put in there. So all of the healthy eating, the exercising in your younger days, the resistance training during the younger days, it's going to just help build your bones.
Got it.
So you have this like max capacity that your bone is hit, which for women happens anywhere. Some actually say it's as young as 18, but up until about 25 to 30 is like the max of what you can build up in your bones.
Oh, wow.
And then anything after that, you absorb some, so it goes down a little. Like it should go like that, goes down a little, and then you build it back up. It goes down, you build it back up, but you can never build more than that max capacity that you have. The problem with osteoporosis is when our bone resorption is more than our bone formation. So we just keep losing, and we may build up a little, but we never get back up to that peak that we had, right? So this is where I don't want to say proper nutrition, because that just sounds so textbooky, right? I want to say it does. And because it's different for each person. We can come up with, in this group of population, generally, like high fruits and vegetables, right? We can say that. But again, when we look at it, sometimes it's like each individual. But this is also where like eating to support your body and its needs, and especially like in this case, high fruits and vegetables can really help benefit your body over the long term, because you're constantly giving it the things it needs to help replenish and build back up to that threshold that it's already established.
What do you think in terms of like intuitive eating? This is something that yogis do a lot, is they're just like, let me just follow my intuition and just eat what my intuition is telling me. Is that something that you would advise to your clients to do?
Depends on who the client is.
Okay.
Honestly. Yeah. Because intuitive eating is amazing as long as your intuition is clear.
How do you discern that? How do you discern if your intuition is clear?
That's a tough one.
I love how I love how I'm just like, I love this so much, because I don't think our audience is ever going to connect intuition into a talk with a dietitian. We've actually never talked about intuition in quite this way.
Totally should. Okay, that one can definitely be a future talk as well.
Yeah.
Because intuitive eating is amazing, I think, again, when it's done. But I think how you keep a clear channel is, I think you figure out what your spiritual practice is, whatever it looks like, whether it's set within a specific religious belief or it's just a practice, a daily practice that you have. I think setting that is one part. I think another part is knowing, one is having some kind of practice. The other one is you may not know what foods support you, but you definitely know what foods trigger you. We all do. We all know what our trigger foods are. And these are like our go-to foods when we're stressed out, we're frustrated, we're angry, we are running away from something, we are self-medicating. It's interesting how often we may not go to a bottle of alcohol to soothe a pain, but yet we sure as heck eat that whole bag of Cheetos. Right?
Why do we do that though? Why do we use food to numb and all these things? What is it? Is there like research behind this as to why certain foods?
I don't fully know. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't fully know the answer to that. But what I do know is this: instinctually, we go to things that are carby or sugary and familiar.
Okay.
But we go to carbs and sugar because that's the quickest way of getting glucose to our body. Yeah. Things that make us trigger, they can put us in survival mode really quick. If we know what they are, if we're leaning towards them, we know something is going on. You could say, yeah, I'm intuitive eating, but I have to eat the whole bag of Cheetos or Doritos, or buy a whole grocery store cake and consume the whole thing in one, whatever, ice cream, like whatever your thing happens to be.
That's when your intuition is not clear. You're like, that's a garbage intuition right there. That's a lie. It's lying to you.
That's a lie. Yeah. Because that is not an area that we want to normally be in, but that's a trigger for us. But the good part of knowing that is that then you can say, okay, what is going on? Because this is not an okay place for me to be. Mm-hmm. Right. So then we can move out of that.
How does someone who doesn't know what to eat necessarily, okay, maybe a bag of Cheetos is like an obvious one. Okay. But then someone is trying to practice intuitive eating and doesn't know whether or not their intuition is clear. How do they figure out whether or not their intuition is lying to them because they don't know what foods are good for them, but they're still trying to work out like this? Like, how do they know that their intuition is like lying basically? And it's not their subconscious being like, come to me, let me take care of you.
Yeah. So one, again, know what your trigger foods are. But the other thing is there's a lot of great books on intuitive eating. Mm-hmm. Actually, I have one. Should I go bring it?
Please do.
Okay, 1 second. So how is this that the one book I need, I'm not going to find, but I found you others. I found you others. So one of your questions was like, how do you know that you're being clear and that you're not just going to trigger stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So with intuition, this one's a great book. It's called Breakthrough Intuition. Mm-hmm. Okay, and this one is by
Rosemary
Ellen. I don't know how to say her last name. Is it Gilly?
Guiley. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. So this one is a really good book that can help you to just understand what it's all about for you, and using your intuition to help with a variety, with whatever you want, really. But staying in that place and knowing what's my intuition and what's the other stuff that's like coming up. This was a good one. Another book is, and it's just so funny that I have a few books on intuitive eating and I can't find any of them, but I found other ones. So that's okay. This one's another one called The Intuitive Way. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this one's another really good one to just help people, to remind them about what is it to be in my intuitive place. How do I do it? What does it look like? Mm-hmm. And this one's a good little guide. So if anyone's like starting their process with it, this one's a good one. There is a book that's actually called Intuitive Eating, and it's really good. And that's the one I can't find. Wow.
But you know what? It's not even meant to be, because one of the things that the membership portal, or just like people who are the majority of people that I suspect are listening on to the YAM podcast, are mothers. And when I was doing the 30 interviews for these women, that like the whole YAM podcast is inspired by those 30 interviews, the top 3 things that women talked to me about was not feeling like they were in tune with their intuition, and it had nothing to do with intuitive eating. So there's a reason why you cannot find the book on intuitive eating, because it is not our listeners' thing. Our listeners' thing is like knowing, learning how do you know that, especially for motherhood, how do you know that what you decide for your children is the right thing? This is what women that I've spoken to the most, that this is where they've like really struggled. So it's not necessarily in food, but if you know how to listen to your intuition, then you can apply it in every area of your life, such as eating.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So those 2 books, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing them with us.
I have 2 others in case you want.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. And it's funny because none of these books are actually related to food at all. Yeah. None of them are related to food, but they're just good ones. This one, Mindfulness. Okay.
By Ellen J. Langer.
Ellen J. Langer. Yes. This one's a great book. Now, mindfulness and intuition are a little different, right? Because mindfulness is an awareness of what you're doing, and intuition is a knowingness. It's a little different, but this one's a really good one because
Awareness and
It's
knowingness.
awareness. That's how I think of it. Like one of them, to be mindful, is I'm
Conscious.
looking at something consciously. Yeah. Which actually brings me to a book that I would highly recommend for all parents, all mothers, which is called The Conscience Parenting.
Yes, I love it. By
So good. Yeah.
Dr. Shefali. I love it.
So good. So good. And then the last one, a fun one, but it's a good one for all of us. It's called Emotional Healing through Mindful Meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this goes back into the idea of just having some sort of a practice, whatever it may look like.
Mm-hmm. And that's by who?
This one is by Barbara Miller Fisher.
We're definitely going to put all the names of the books in the blog. So definitely check that out.
Yeah,
if you missed it.
Great books. Great books.
Or in the show notes.
Sure. You can put it all over the place.
Yeah.
Put it all onto it. Yeah. So yeah, because I think that sometimes when you are clear on why are you doing something, when you're clear on that, it helps you to really excel no matter what. Like the same food can be eaten in two different situations. And in one situation, it can help you. And in another situation, it can hurt you. And Socrates' famous quote where he says, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food, right? It's true. It's really true. The power of food is much greater than we realize.
Yeah, that's huge. I think when it comes to like food, especially in our ethnic cultures, like in the Persian culture, like in Canada, I know when my aunt, my Zandai, when she was going through medical school training, she's actually white. This one happens to be white, and she's the only doctor in the family. And she, in her medical school training in Calgary, Canada, she had a Persian chef come to teach all the physicians about Persian cuisine and cooking, because Persians are notorious about just healing everything. Either it's like diarrhea or headaches or whatever it is with food. And it was literally the medical school invited a Persian chef to come and to educate. Do you think that was like at all like your inspiration? Like growing up, like your parents telling you just eat this or eat that?
It's funny because my parents didn't necessarily, I don't remember that. I think what I remembered more of in relation to food was don't eat too much of this because it's bad for you. Or it was like the guilt part of food. And I will say another thing I love about food is that food is like its own entity in many ways. It's a part of it. One, we all need it for survival, right?
Yes.
But it's a part of our culture. It's a part of our religion. It's a part of our daily. It's something we do daily, right? It's a part of our language and interaction. It's a part of our social. It's a part of, unfortunate to say it this way, but how government actually controls people, right? It can also be through food, right? In the sense of foods that are subsidized in countries versus foods that are not subsidized, right? Food can also be, it's a luxury in many ways. And at the same time,
healthy food, I would say, for sure.
Yeah. Access to food can be an issue. Or then if it's not access, it could be resources that you have available in order to cook it. So you could be getting some of the best, healthiest, all the vegetables in the world. And then you chop them up and you deep fry them, right?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, French fries, it's a deep fried vegetable, right?
Yes.
We all love it, right?
Yes.
The French fry continually over time also is leading to obesity and heart disease and cardiovascular factors like cancers even, right? Like all these things that are coming up, hormonal imbalances, because we're getting like other issues that are coming up in our body, fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, which is like a big thing that we're starting to see more and more of. And all this is because we fried a vegetable. Yeah, I'm making it bigger than just that. But
it's huge.
It's the idea that you can take something really good and turn it really bad really quick.
I actually just recently learned that to eat a French fry, you cause like inflammation in your stomach and your intestine for 2 days, longer than if you were to take a hit of smoking. And I was just like,
interesting.
And I've become really cognizant, and like French fries are my weakness. Like when I was younger, my thing was like, when I would get upset, I would go shopping, and then I would go to McDonald's and I would order the same thing. I would order, and also McDonald's in China is so delicious. It's not like the States. In the States, it's disgusting. So in China, it's actually delicious. So if you come here to eat the fast food, it's like insane.
We'll have to go to China. We'll have to go to McDonald's.
I'm not going to say it's healthier. I'm just saying it's tastier for sure.
Tastier, yeah.
I would get the French fry, like the spicy chicken burger meal. So the chicken burger was spicy and it was fried, and then the fries, and then the Coke. And literally this combination of things, like it literally took me a while to just like, when I was dealing with my emotions, very early on, thankfully, I cut out, like the shopping was no longer, because of whenever I'm feeling emotional, like I don't shop. I'm like, I don't have that kind of money anymore to just randomly shop for that.
Yeah.
But it became so difficult for me to uncouple when I'm so emotionally distraught to McDonald's. And I was just like, and literally I worked on it so hard that I was just like, I even asked a hypnotherapist at one point to help me out. And it was funny that it wasn't actually what she did, but it had to, I learned a lot about food, and I realized that fried foods, it numbs pain. And so every time I was feeling emotional pain, fried foods, sugar amplifies your emotions. So sometimes sugar can like really, if you're sad, it makes you like more sad. But like fries,
but it also numbs it to a certain degree too.
Yeah, for sure. But the fries is like a pure numbing. It's like a painkiller right there, like an emotional painkiller. And I literally know this. I knew this. I was doing it. And then I knew this. And then I was consciously doing it. And then it was like, all right, now no longer that when I have an emotional thing, I just allow the wave to pass and not numb first, because after it just delays the pain. It doesn't actually deal with it. But talk to us more about guilt and like emotions with eating, because I feel like this is a huge one. And like surprise is like at the end, we've only uncovered this. But
guilt and emotional eating. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like so much of what we talked about can literally be, maybe we just change your podcast to being all about food and nutrition.
You know what? I literally might just like moving forward, just do that. I really think that's actually what it's going to be.
Shift it for you. No, I'm kidding.
It's going to be the future of the YAM podcast, guys. This is a preparation for it right here. After this, you'll likely see a whole bunch of nutrition talks.
Oh, too funny.
Because
too funny.
The thing is that like mothers, they are the ones who usually cook the meals at home.
Yes.
And they are usually the ones that like feed the children with emotional things. When they're upset, they want to make their kids feel better. They make certain foods to do that. Just like what your parents do themselves of when they're in emotional pain.
I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, this is really like a huge aspect of like motherhood is like related to the food, because humans are so attached to our parents for survival, and that survival is very much tied to food. It's like, even in China, like we don't even ask, how are you? We ask, have you eaten? Is your stomach
is that
full?
The greeting?
Yeah, the greeting is 你吃饭了吗? Did you eat? Did you eat? If you ate, that's like literally how somebody says if you're like doing good.
Yeah.
And so like in China, like every food that you eat, this is for your blood. This is for your liver. This is for your eyes. This is for your brain. And literally people will use their chopsticks and put food on your plates. Eat more of this. This is good for this. Eat more of this. Eat. This is good for this.
Interesting.
So it's like huge. And so there's very purposeful eating, even though Chinese food could also be like super oily and super fried and super sweet and super delicious, but not necessarily the most healthy. But like the traditional type of Chinese cooking is really, all of it is meant to supplement what you're missing out on now. So like Persian
yes,
cuisine and foods is to use food to heal your body.
yes.
But I think because in China, there's so many variations of the north, the south, the different types of food. Any region you go to, depending on the climate, like how spicy the food is, how sweet the food is, all of these things like differ like a lot. So actually really talk to us about like food and like motherhood and emotional health.
Yeah. Oh, I think this is such a big one though.
I feel like this is going to be the second podcast. This is going to be the part 2 of the podcast. Yeah. It's like we're not done. We're not done yet. We just opened up a whole can of worms.
or maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the podcast. Who knows? So I think when it comes to food and emotions and parenting, especially mothering, I think because the mother is that initial and first caregiver for the child, and not that the dad isn't there, but the mom's role in nourishing the child starts when they're in the womb and they're growing, right? So what I find is that it's really interesting that how kids really look at what their moms do, as well as their dads, but in regards to like mothering with it, they just pick it up and they just pull it in and it becomes a part of what they do, right? If a mom is emotionally numbing, whether it's with those McDonald's French fries, which I have to tell you, one of my best friends from high school, and we went to college together. He was a gymnast. Like this guy was like, he was actually trying out for the Olympic team when he had a really bad crash, hurt himself and he couldn't. But he would call McDonald's fries crack fries. And I was like, I got it. Yeah.
So good.
And he was convinced that they salt it and then they like pour some crack on it because I just can't ever get enough. And he was like, that was his thing too. Like the mom that's numbing with these foods, the kids will see this and then the kids will learn this behavior versus the mom that I could say that part, the mom that's numbing and the kids will do it. Then there's the relationship that, because the mom's the one mainly cooking, that you create with food and your kids, right? So what does that relationship look like? Sure. All of us moms, we don't want our kids to have sugar. I get it. It affects their behaviors, their moods. They're wild and crazy right after they have it. And you're just trying to be healthier. But when you go super extreme with it, then your kid is going to notice that and they're going to have their moments, right? Versus like also being on the other end of it, where if you are just like, whatever, have whatever you want all the time, then your kid goes a whole different route with it. So the child isn't learning how to be balanced with food. But when the mom is balanced with food, then the kids pick up on it. So for example, in my husband's family, they had a tradition, and we've totally picked this up as well, that like for special occasions, cake, there's always cake, right? First day of school, there's cake. Last day of school, there's cake. If you did really good with something, there's cake. Whatever, outside of just birthdays and regular holidays, there's just always cake because his mom loved cake. And it was one of her kind of passion things that she was able to pass on to her boys. And because of that, the Grammers love cake. All of them love cake, right? So now here we are. And I love this tradition. Like I love being able to celebrate with something like fun like that, right? So we do that, but we also, of course, we bake a healthier version. And sometimes we don't, sometimes we just give into it.
Yeah.
Like we try to be more mindful of this choice that we're making because we want it to be this celebratory thing that we're doing. But at the same time, there's limits to it. We don't want to overdo it. We don't want to fall off the deep end. So what I typically find in my house that happens, at least with my older son, is that when something is made and it comes into the house, he'll have some of it, like an 8-inch cake that we bake. It can easily last in our house like a week or two because he's not going to have a lot of it, right? Now, my younger one's a little different, right? And my younger one also, his kind of first year of life, within the first year of life, the pandemic happened and things are a little different. And the pandemic was really hard on me and really stressful. Like I still have not even gone to healing from that. And we are where we are now. It was hard. It was big. And I'm healing in other ways, but that one, I still haven't even got to it. Put it in a box, put it on a shelf for a later time when we're going to get to it. But one of the things that I find with my younger one is he doesn't love cake, but he loves cookies. And he has, for him, it's almost like this obsession. Like he just can't stop. And when I look back at a lot of where I was during the pandemic and during that first year of his life, that second year of his life, we're in a weird way still in it, but not in it. It is what it is. But because I wasn't in a good place, he picks up on a lot of that. And because I felt insecure, now he feels insecure, but he goes to food for it, right? So he's almost like
and you went to food for it too.
I didn't. At times I definitely did, but it was also more of like where my emotional state was. My emotional state was not in a good place, right? So he picks up on this ancestral kind of adaptation, right? Of I need this for survival. But what this happens to be is the sugary, carby, sweet.
The cookies.
And extreme with it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because there's times when he'll just flat out say, he'll be like, I like sugar. Like, I know
love
you
it, mommy. Mommy, just in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
I love sugar.
He'll be like, mommy, I really like sugar. Yeah. It's this way he says it.
Yeah. Like, he's possessed.
I get it. It's delicious. When my older one, it's okay. Like he can do without it. He doesn't fiend for it. It doesn't become this thing that's, I just have to have it. No, there's times he craves it. But I've also realized the more that I work on my relationship with it, the more my younger one can be okay with it. So one of the things I'll say to him, there's these little alphabet cookies that they love. Like a cinnamony little alphabet cookie. And I'll be like, just take one. Or I'll be like, okay, you can have two. My older one just takes two. He goes, he's happy. My younger one, fistfuls. He just goes, he's 2 fistfuls? And I'm like, no, 2 cookies, right? But then I'll take his hands and I'll put them back in. And I'll be like, no, just 2 cookies for now. And then he'll take the 2 and he'll be like, this is all I get. And then I'll say something to him, like something to the effect of like, Connor, remember, we're always going to have enough. There's always going to be enough for you. Like the rest, we save it for tomorrow. We save it for later, for another day, right? But there's always going to be enough for you. So that he feels, because what he's attributing it to is safety. A feeling of safety. Yeah. So you have to have it all in order to feel safe, right? In order to feel pulled together, in order to feel secure. When that's not going to do it for you. We all know this. We all know going to that food isn't going to do it. Yeah. I think it's important for moms, families to just really look at that kind of stuff and then look at what are your food rules in your house? What is important to you? Is it super structured? Is it not? And it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to say one way is better than another, but why is it a certain way? And are you comfortable with that? But also you have to also see who are the kids you have, right? I find, and I do this a lot, like a charcuterie plate of fruits and vegetables and nuts, right? And I put it out on the table. Both of my boys, they're 7 and 3, right? They're going to eat different things off this plate. But within an afternoon of walking around, playing, reading books, whatever, right? It's going to get eaten. maybe even more, right? So within a short period, like they're going to get a lot of good stuff, right? And that's who they are. Like their personalities aren't necessarily the ones to sit down structured to eat a food or like to have a snack like that. When in another family, maybe that's what they'll do. But I also find if I don't necessarily have something like that out and available, where when they're feeling like they want to graze, there's something like that that's healthy around, then they're going to go for something sugary because they've waited too
in
long.
the cabinet. Yeah.
Yeah. And it literally will be like right before we're about to have a meal. So I'm like, okay, you're hungry. You're definitely hungry.
Yeah.
But now we've gone into hangry state.
Yeah.
When either way, you're going to eat your dinner or your next meal. And that's the thing. Maybe I got lucky with that one. I don't necessarily have children who a snack spoils their meal. Like usually they'll eat. Other things will spoil their meal, like excitement, friends over. If we're going to go to a pool or something afterwards, oh, forget it. They're like not going to eat at all. But just being able to navigate those types of things. But then the other thing I found is what my actions are. If
Modeling.
Yeah,
I talk about this a lot.
Completely. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And so if I'm keeping stuff around that I'm eating, even if they've gone to bed, like we think our children didn't see the box of Oreos that we ate the night before, but they totally see it in the trash the next day. Pay attention. We don't think they do, but they pay attention to these kinds of things. If I start to do that kind of behavior, like after they've gone to sleep, because I'm coping with whatever, they pick up on it. And then they learn that's what they can do, right? So there's literally a time last summer, again, we're in the pandemic, right? When we had gone with family for a little like week getaway, and our son was literally taking like the bars, the chips, and sneaking them in his room and eating them. And like we found the wrappers like in the top bunk of the bed, like he's like hiding them. But I was like, oh yeah,
genius.
This is stuff that he has seen that has happened when we're stressed or when we're feeling insecure. And what's the stress coming up for him? He's going to school for the first time because he went to first grade last year, or not last. Yes, this last year. It's something new that he's scared. So he's my coping behavior is I have to eat all this food in private in order, and then you don't even deal with it.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Or one of the other rules we have in our house is that, so like you want the cookie, because also I try to not keep them around all the time, but yeah, they come. I'm not going to even sugarcoat that one. They come. Whether it's like we had a Baha'i gathering and I thought there was going to be 40 people there and 6 people showed up. So all the cupcakes or the boxes of cookies or whatever, brownies, whatever happened to come, things end up in the house, whether we like it or not. Or like someone comes over and they like bring a box of cookies and you're just like, oh, so good. We don't eat gluten or sugar, any of this processed stuff, but now it's here. Yeah, there is stuff. Halloween candy. The list goes on. Let's be honest. But one of our rules is you have to have a fruit and a vegetable before you have it. Just a fruit and vegetable. It could be an apple and a celery stick. It could be some berries and a full carrot, whatever, right? Have one fruit, one vegetable, and then go for it. You can have one. And I find that with that one in place, they're only coming to the cookie because they're hungry. Yeah. So we've given them some good things. And most often we don't even get it to the cookie because by the time they finish those 2, we're on to the next meal. We're having lunch. We're having dinner. It usually more happens in the afternoon. So we're going in that kind of a direction in order to spin it, to be like, okay, now we don't have to fight about the cookie. But I also find if I say no, because I've seen this with other children, like if I'm constantly saying no, then when we're in a situation where I may not be able to control my child, like a Baha'i Holy Day gathering, right? When there is a table full of all the heavenly desserts that a 7-year-old, or I'm just thinking like back when he was like 5, all of them are there, right? He could just go to town I could be talking to someone and I've spotted it and I'm going to eat the whole table. I don't have the kid that does that. Luckily, I don't know. The second one is still questionable, but my older one, he's not necessarily the kid that does that, or he'll come ask me for it. And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Or if we're at a birthday party, I'm like, it's all fair game. When we're at home, I'm probably going to say no more often, or I may say something like, we've already had a sugary thing today. We're not going to have any more. But when we're out in public, I think because of just how we've coped with it, and we just talk about food, and we also talk a lot about like putting foods in our body that really nourish us and give us what we need. So like tonight, for example, my older one, he ate steak and 3 large piece carrots. And that was his dinner. And he was like really happy with that. He was content. My younger one ate rice and beans. He's a rice and bean kid. So he went that route with it. But it's at the end of the day, I can feel confident that I did my best and that they're getting foods that are helping them, and they are able to make better choices when they're not necessarily with me in settings or just as they grow. Like it puts my heart at ease when I see them gravitating more towards the healthier foods, even when other things are around. Yeah. But I think it's a lot of modeling. It's a lot of just constantly reinforcing. It's a lot of accepting all foods and not making any foods like bad or taboo foods, right? Because if I do that, then when you're not with me, you're going to go to town. But if we feel like, okay, we're going to have an all foods are okay philosophy, right? You're going to have a little of something and then you're going to be over it. Like you're not going to need to fulfill something with food. So the relationship with food changes. Another thought is for parents that have space to do this, and whatever that looks like for you, whether it's a balcony or your backyard, get your kids involved with planting food, planting different crops, because I think when they go through that process of putting it in, watering it, watching it grow, and then I get to eat it, that helps. Just like in the house, get them involved with cooking, whatever that looks like. And sometimes it's as simple as just mixing, right? Or the number of times I've given like my 3-year-old, especially like a plastic knife, because he really wants to cut as well. And I'm like, there's no way I'm not going to give you a real knife to cut. I don't trust you around me with a real knife.
Yeah.
You know? Like, you're 3. I don't know what'll happen. But give him a plastic knife, give him some green beans, let him cut. Then they feel like they're a part of the process. Grocery shopping, right? Take them grocery shopping with you, have them pick out stuff. I always have the kids pick out stuff. Like, what do you guys want? And sometimes it's something random, like garlic. I'm like, we can make tortilla with garlic. We can use it for our sauce, whatever. And then they want to taste it. And I let them. Because I think that's how you learn, by experimenting. Chase has wanted to do jalapeno peppers and serrano peppers for a long time. And I'm like, kid, let's start with the other peppers.
Yeah.
Start with the sweets and we'll work our way up. I haven't got there yet, but he actually found he loves like the sweeter peppers, specifically like the red color one. So I don't think I've bought a green bell pepper other than maybe to make something like Cajun style food, because these are the other things they like. Or we try different types of cucumbers. And you could do that. You could pick a week to do, this is going to be like our melon week, right? Learn about the foods, what falls in the melon category, right? And try different foods, right? Because I feel like little things, or berries are a great one because there's such a large variety. Apples in the fall time, oh, that's one of my favorites, because we always think of like the Fuji and the Gala apple, but there's so many different types of apples. Grapes, even now, they've gotten creative with like the cotton candy grapes, or I swear, I feel like there was one recently that I saw. It was like pineapple, something or another. But the point is just being creative about foods that we're bringing into our house and just getting them involved. Sorry, maybe that was a bigger explanation.
No, I think that is something that like so many moms are going to find so useful, And I
Yeah.
think that's why I was like so mesmerized by everything, because it was so helpful. And I know the listeners would
That could be your tip section.
yeah, like
a quick tips of things to do.
Yes. I think this is, at least in China, it's like literally the stress of all parents of just thinking about what to feed their children.
Yeah.
How to feed their children, how to get them to eat different varieties of food, or if they refuse to eat certain foods, like all of these aspects of it. I think it's like the stress of their child. And unfortunately, I don't know if this is fortunate, or it's probably like a more fortunate aspect with Chinese parents, is that whatever the parents say, the child will do. So there's no argument from the child's part of,
do they want to trade me kids?
Yeah, they're really good. And one of our moms, like in the membership portal, actually, she spoke to Julie, and Julie told her that her child doesn't do well with sugar, and literally cane sugar takes a really long time to cut out. And she did it, and she cut it out, and her child, even on her own, she doesn't eat candy. I can't eat sugar, and she eats something else. And sometimes she gets a little sad. But
how old is her child?
Like, she was 5 at the time when she,
wow.
I think, stopped eating sugar. But then when she got older, and she was like, she went to grade 1 and having like classmates and stuff like that, and she would go to like birthday parties, like that's when it became like, oh, and she would look at her mom like, we don't eat sugar, or she was very confident in saying out loud, I don't eat sugar.
Good for her. Good for her.
And it was like really, and I think with parents, I think it's really, if they like put it in their mind of what they want for their child, or that something is not good for their child, there's no way they would do it. So they're actually quite compliant, I would say. There's no shortage of compliancy. If they know something is good, they will do it. There's no in between. Yes, maybe, sometimes. Nuh-uh. It's really a lack of education, or lack of knowledge, or lack of knowing that this food is actually not good. Yeah. One time I wrote a blog about dairy and the substitutes to use for it. This blog, I don't even think I finished it, because it was so controversial when I wrote it. Like, I've never written an article that received so much backlash in my life. And I got scared, because I was not ready for like naysayers at that point. And I was just like, how is it possible? All the blogs that I've written, the blog about dairy gets the biggest backlash. And the reason for that is actually public health related, which in the blog I actually mentioned, because like milk in the 60s, a lot of people were suffering from osteoporosis. All the children, they were born with like, they had like rickets, or they had like bone deformities in their legs. Like they would get bow-shaped legs. And this was a huge thing in China. And what the government did was fortify vitamin D in milk. This is not naturally in milk. Vitamin D is not naturally in milk. It's fortified in it, meaning they add this vitamin to the milk, so that, and milk is, because it was a product at the time where everyone was eating it. It's also the same for like iodine, salt. Like iodized salt is something that every household uses, and iodine is like a mineral that we need just a tiny little bit of. So to fortify iodine with salt, again, another type of thing that does not exist naturally together. The government will put these foods together so that on a mass population level, if they're having like issues with, like in China, it had to do with bone health. And when I was in my undergrad, I took a course in world problems in nutrition, and iodine was an issue in Kerala in India, which is a state that's like right by the ocean and has a lot of like seafood, but they were all eating goitrogen foods like taro, which was like stopping the absorption of like iodine in it. So with this blog, it was just like, in China, like there was so much good education done to the people to like, milk is good for my child's bone health. And for you to tell me not to give my child milk is is like telling me that I'm like harming my child. And I was like, absolutely,
Wow.
milk is good for your child's health. But now that we have all these healthy foods and we can get vitamin D from many different sources,
Absolutely.
that the detriment of getting milk, which is a very large protein the body cannot break down as quickly, and it's a lot of energy wastage to break milk down. And most countries other than the Nordic countries should not be drinking milk. Nobody can really digest milk, and if you can, it's because it's become adaptive.
Yeah.
So
but
it was
actually one of the main enzymes for breaking down milk comes in our mouth, and it's an enzyme that we lose once we get teeth. Like babies have the enzyme, but once teeth start to come in, we lose that enzyme. So therefore it becomes harder for us to start breaking down milk fat specifically even. Yeah. So if we can't break milk down, we can't break the proteins of milk down, and digestion starts in the mouth, it becomes a lot harder in the body. So this is where you're getting that. Yeah. Fascinating.
It's really fascinating. I feel like food, there's so much like to it
So much to it. Yeah.
Really we could talk about it for forever.
Yeah. And actually, this is a great example of a situation where, as a country, they are looking at helping the people. So by encouraging milk, by fortifying it with vitamin D, which, by the way, America does the same. Like the push for milk and vitamin D is for the same reasons, right? But it doesn't necessarily work for the majority of people. But it's so encouraged from a public health standpoint, and as it should be. Public health should be looking out for us, but it also should continue to change and shift with the changing times and the shifts and the things that we see, because it can't be standard and okay across the board, right? Because we go to milk for calcium. However, broccoli has just as much and is so good for your body, right? You get so much more from the broccoli. So it's very naive to say that you just get it from one source and say that across the board. And hopefully the future of kind of nutrition and health will start to look into that to see what we can do and how we can encourage these types of things.
Because even when you were saying that like plums and apples are good for bone health, and I'm like, those are not even the obvious ones that we think about when we think about bone health. And there's so many other types of fruits and vegetables that actually are good for bone health specifically, that we probably don't even know that it's related. It's unless it's like been educated to us that this food is good for your this, then we wouldn't know to associate it together. But it's really like each food has so many different types of minerals and things to it that it could actually be good for multiple different things, but we're just not educated to that extent of the mineral component of it. But we're just like, all right, carrots are good for the eyes, walnuts are good for the brain, whatever looks like the shape of the vegetable is good for that part of the body. Like it's just
also to just like further elaborate on the plum and apple. So within the study, we found that plums help the bones, but what we actually found apples did was that it helped people's lipid profiles. So the idea of an apple a day keeps the doctor away, we actually found it's 2 apples a day will keep the doctor away.
Wow.
So there is some truth behind the little saying. Yeah. And it did. It oh my God, it didn't affect sugars as much as we thought. And lipid profiles improved significantly.
And profile is like the fat profile of that
cholesterol,
is stored.
Triglycerides, your HDL cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol. Yeah. And the components that go along with them. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh,
fascinating.
Literally, I think we just changed the whole trajectory of the YAM podcast. We did it, guys.
It is called YAM for a reason.
That is true. The YAM is actually
I know. But I just think it's funny.
That is true. It's so funny because most people actually tell me, that's actually really funny that you say that now. because often people are like, oh, the YAM podcast. And I'm like, no, it's the YAM podcast. It's the seed sound in yoga of the heart chakra, which is actually about universal love.
Yeah.
But it's also the acronym for Yoga Avec. But it's
Okay.
mostly the YAM podcast. And the reason why we called it the YAM podcast is because of this universal love in the heart chakra. And the thing is that where we're basically envisioning is that our mothers are the first ones who show us about this universal love that God has for us. So by focusing on this YAM, this universal love, and since we're also, this podcast is for the global world of mothers. It's not just for any particular like country or place, or so it's like really like mothers from all around the world who come. They can eat the yam, they can hum the yam, they can come practice with the yam. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
It's so good.
All right. It was so good having you, Raz. Thank you so much for joining us on the YAM podcast. This has been fantastic. The most impromptu podcast that we've ever done. Love it.
Because that's how you do it, right?
Yeah. And I'm so excited to actually tell our listeners that Raz is actually going to be, by the time that the podcast comes out, Raz would have already been in the membership portal and in the Yoga Avec Moi conference that we're going to have. All of the replays you'll be able to find in the membership portal or on YouTube. So if you just type in Raz Grammer Yoga Avec Moi, you'll be able to find it. I'm sure she's going to share a lot of amazing gems on like hormonal health with women and all these things. So please do continue watching and listening to Raz if you would like to keep learning from her. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.